Welcome, Frans Timmermans, in your hometown Heerlen, once a mining city, as we can see in this beautiful exhibition. Both your grandparents were mine workers. Can you tell us a little bit about your family history here?
Sitting here, I'm reminded of the Randy Newman song, "These are my people, this is my country." And I feel at home because of the history, because of the fact that my daughter still lives here, my mother still lives here. This is home, and it is home because my granddads both worked in the coal mines here, and they lived a good life, and at the same time they lived a life always being scared. I was only 4 years old or 5 years old when the then Minister of Economic Affairs, leader of the Labour Party, Den Uyl, came here to Heerlen to announce that the mines would be closed. And at first, people didn't want to believe it. They didn't understand why, but it didn't make any economic sense anymore. Also because the Netherlands had discovered huge amounts of natural gas, and that was a lot cheaper and a lot cleaner. So they decided to close the mines, and they wanted to do it in the most social way possible, with a lot of compensation for the workers and the families. But then, of course, right in the middle of that closure of all these mines, we were struck by the first energy crisis in 1973. So governments were short of cash, the economy was not flourishing, was going down. So this region was struck in a horrible way by the combination of closure of mines and the petrol crisis of '73 and the economic crisis of '77. All I want to do in the next years is to avoid that we repeat the same mistakes that we made here in Heerlen and in other regions in the Netherlands. I just visited a building project, a nearby town, mining town also, Kerkrade. And there I asked a man who'd just gotten a new house, a new energy efficient house, "What is your energy bill per month?" And he says, well, it's about 16 euros. Because he has solar panels, because he has a heat pump, because he has good insulation. And then people living in old houses with comparable space, they pay 400, 500 euros a month for their energy bill. So the level of energy bills is becoming just impossible for people with lower incomes to pay. So we need to fix that. And the cheapest energy is the energy you don't use. And we need to make sure that we refurbish buildings, that we install rooftop solar everywhere, and that we make sure that people live in houses that are better insulated. That's how we can get the energy bills to go down, because this is unsustainable. And we thought the energy prices would be high for a couple of months, but they're probably going to be high for years. And that's why we really need to rush the transition into renewable energy and the transition into consuming much less energy. I strongly believe in the need to be energy sovereign in Europe. We need to be the producers of our own energy. Since we don't have any oil and we have very little gas left, that has to be other energy. And the cheapest energy we have, and we can generate ourselves, is renewable energy, offshore wind and especially solar. So we need to massively invest into that. It's not going to be enough for the time being, so we also need to diversify our energy resourcing. So we need to start buying LNG from countries we can rely on, or also pipeline gas from places like Azerbaijan, etc. With our plans, we can reduce the import of Russian gas by 2/3 before the end of this year.
And we're in Heerlen, it's personal for you, but the war in Ukraine with Russia is in a way also personal for you. You live there. How
Yes.
do you analyze it from your personal point of view?
It's absolutely heartbreaking to see that Mr. Putin and his ilk stop at nothing. They're now bombing hospitals, they're bombing schools, they're indiscriminately killing people in the streets. This is a level of barbarism that I would not have expected in the heart of Europe only a few months ago, but it's a reality. And Mr. Putin will stop at nothing to get what he wants, which is to rebuild a Russian empire. And we need to make sure we now defend our own interests, and we need to make sure that we work to give the Russian people who don't want this war an opportunity to live lives like we live. Regardless of all this ideological confrontation that Putin is looking for. The Russians want to live like we do. They aspire freedom, they aspire for their families to prosper, they want to live peaceful lives with their neighbors, and this man is pushing them into a confrontation with their neighbors instead of in peaceful relations with their neighbors. He's turning his country in sort of a North Korea, a pariah in the international community, and the Russians deserve so much better.
So climate crisis, energy security crisis, a war in Europe. Was it ever more relevant to be a European politician like you are yourself?
Sometimes it's also, you have to be careful not to fall into despair. Because whenever you think, okay, we had an economic crisis, we're coming out of it, bam, COVID slams. And then we're slowly coming out of COVID, our economy is recovering, bam, Putin invades Ukraine. So we can handle that. My generation, we've had a very, very peaceful and optimistic youth and childhood. We've been able to travel, we've been able to do so many things, but mostly I suffer for my kids who went from crisis to crisis, their generation. Just imagine you're a teenager now and you've missed the last 2 years of developing your social life, etc. And now you have to fear for the stability and peace in Europe because of Putin. So it's a very difficult time, but we have to take our responsibility. We have to take our responsibility. I feel a strong responsibility towards my people, but also towards the next generation.
True, and you speak now like a passionate politician from Europe, from Brussels. How do you keep it up to keep it local?
To think of my kids, and now to think of my grandson, and to think of my mom who still lives here and has lived a long life, starting with the misery of the Second World War. We are part of a continuum. We are part of the past, and we need to build a future. And the only thing we can do is take from the experience of our parents, build our own experience, and then give it on to our kids. The biggest trap for any politician is to have a lack of imagination. So many people are now saying, oh, I could not imagine Putin doing this. I think I could not imagine that the climate crisis can kill us. Well, try and imagine it, because if you can imagine it, you can also find solutions to the problems.